Yeah. Senator, that's perfect. Yeah, no, come over here and sit down.
Public comment, let me see.
Actually.
Public comment?
Yeah. Do you have extra packets?
Yes. Did you need a public comment? Need a packet? Yeah.
Chelsea, you need some help. Your drape,
I know.
your shoulder drape.
I'm gonna have to delay a little.
Take your time. We got everything. So good. We've got a full of, we've got quorum.
Okay, all the YouTube streaming and Zoom is set.
All right. Okay. So aloha mai kākou. My name is Dawn Chang and I am co-chair of the Hawaii Invasive Species Council. I co-chair with Chair Sharon Hurd from the Department of Ag, but today you have Dr. Kim here. Thank you. So, but today's also, do want to acknowledge on behalf of HISC. Today is Chelsea, our fearless leader, our HISC coordinators, final meeting with us. She is going on to greater things, personal, and take care of her family. So Chelsea, thank you very much for all that you do, not only for HISC, but for the people of Hawaii, keeping us a little safer from invasive. So thank you so much. Okay, so this is the September 29, 2025 meeting of the council, and it is 1:03. We are holding this meeting as a hybrid meeting. Some of us are in person in the Kalani Moku Building boardroom in Honolulu, but we are also holding this meeting remotely via Zoom, and it can be watched live on the HISC YouTube channel. This is a public meeting and members of the public have the opportunity to submit written testimony or oral testimony on the agenda item. You can use the raise hand function to provide oral testimony when the agenda item comes up, or if you are on YouTube, please state in the comments that you want to provide oral testimony and his staff will provide you the Zoom link. When you enter, please be sure to keep your camera off and microphone muted until the council calls on you for public testimony or will get an echo. We ask that members of the public testifying on agenda items limit your testimony to 3 minutes so we can try to get everyone. For all meeting participants, I would like to stress the importance of speaking slowly, clearly, and if you come up to the table, into the microphone. The council may go into executive session pursuant to HRS 92-5A4 in order to consult with its attorney on questions and issues pertaining to council's powers, duties, privileges, and immunities. And we do have our Deputy Attorney General, Danica Swenson, on Zoom. I would like to now introduce the voting members of the council that are in the room, and then I'll go online. So I will start first with Dexter from DOT.
Thank you. Here.
Miriam's
Here, present.
Dr. Kim.
Yeah, present.
Don Shang, Chair of the HISC. Phyllis.
Village Notebook Roll for Parwinder, Greywall, Dean, University of Hawaii, Manoa, Sitar.
Thank you. So these are the 5 voting members. I'd like now to go on to our legislative members in the room. Oh, excuse me, I have one more. Kathy Ho, our DOA, Department of Health representative. Kathy?
Present. Hello, everyone.
Thank you. We have a full, now, Chelsea, we don't always have everybody here. See what happens? I know. Yeah, everybody showed up for you. Everybody showed up for you. So we have actually all of our voting members present or on Zoom. I'd now like to introduce, go around our non-voting legislative members that are in the room and online. I'll first start off within the room.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, here. Okay, Rep. Kahaloa, the night of Orton. Okay, Senator Gabbard.
Here.
And is there anybody on Zoom? I don't see any. Anybody on Zoom representing a legislator? Okay,
We also have our deputy AG for HISC, Danica Swenson online.
okay, thank you for that. So with that, thank you, Danica. So I am going to follow the order of the agenda. We have not had any items be asked to be moved up. So the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of May 29th, 2028. Council members, have you had an opportunity to review the draft meeting minutes? And do you have any questions or comments?
Chair,
Yes,
I'm going to abstain from voting because I was not present.
thank you for that. Board members, any other questions or any other abstentions? We can't have too many more abstentions. Because then I'm not gonna have enough for a quorum. Kathy?
Chair, I also was not present at the meeting, so I would abstain as well.
Okay, I have 2, 4, 6.
And I was not in the meeting as well. So I had to-
Let's postpone the vote.
Who watched the video?
So you know what, we are going to have to defer this item to the next meeting because I don't have sufficient voting members who can take action on the minutes. That's okay. So we'll just wait till the next time. So next item on the agenda is submittal 1A, requesting council approval for the Department of Land and Natural Resources as the administrative host for HISC to proceed with a new organizational structure for HISC program support. And the submittal will be presented by Chelsea or not. Chelsea?
Mahalo Chair Ching, members of the council, members of the public. Thank you so much for this. Chelsea Arnott, program manager for the Hawaii Invasive Species Council. And I am here today to present on our submittal number 1, which is requesting council approval for the Department of Land and Natural Resources as the administrative host for the HISC to proceed with a new organizational structure for the HISC program support. I provided some background in the submittal. I'm trying to keep the presentation short because I know the big agenda item today is our FY26 HISC budget today. But some of the background for the HISC, established by the Hawaii Revised Statute 194. It takes the leadership from the Departments of Agriculture, Departments of Health, Agriculture, Biosecurity, Department of Land and Natural Resources, Health, Business, Economic Development, and Transportation, and the University of Hawaii to provide statewide coordination and policy direction on invasive species prevention and management in Hawaii. We also have legislative representatives that are one senator, sorry, I'm all overwhelmed right now. One senator and one representative from each of the counties, which are represented, many of them here today and also on the slide. And then, of course, what we have is our HISC program support team, which is led by the program manager. We have 4 additional staff, which includes our planner, our research and projects coordinator, the Hawaii Pacific Weed Risk Assessment Specialist, and our early detection community liaison that facilitates the 643pest.org online reporting system. So currently, HISC is administered by the Department of Land and Natural Resources, but the program support team sits under the Division of Forestry and Wildlife. When HISC was created in 2003, there was a position within Division of Forestry and Wildlife that helped basically set up the council and get it going. And so when the council was finally established in 2003, that position was used to support the council initiatives and objectives that were laid out in the statute. That position served as the DOFA invasive species coordinator, but has since morphed into what my position is today, which is primarily supporting the council interagency coordination, legislative tracking, policy direction, and all the other things, along with the team that I just mentioned, many of who are here in the room today. My position is set up as an SR 22. It's really a biologist position, and does not currently really, the PD does not necessarily match what the position does to this day. And along with the positions, the additional positions are contracted through the Research Corporation of the University of Hawaii. So DOFA contracts those positions under the division. And so with the session, last session, I gotta like gather myself right now.
Take a deep breath. We don't want you having premature labor here, okay?
As we look to the horizon in 5 years, when the council is said to move and transfer over to the Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity in 2030, we look at how the program support would transfer with this. And with it being under the Division of Forestry and Wildlife currently, those positions are Division of Forestry and Wildlife positions. So they wouldn't necessarily transfer with the council transferring. So what we're proposing, and I've met with our co-chairs, Chair Ching and Chair Hurd, a few weeks back to discuss a potential reorganization of our program support staff. So it sits administratively under the department and sets up civil service positions that can support the council moving forward. So looking at our current structure, there's my position. Again, this is set up as a Natural Resource Management Specialist 5. It's a SR 22. I've laid out kind of the main objectives of my position, and then each of the RCUH positions under the direction of the invasive species coordinator and what they currently work on. The restructure would ultimately look something similar to the Agricultural Development Corporation, some of the other boards and commissions that sit administratively under these various departments. So it would pull out an executive director, which would be an exempt position that would oversee the management of the program support for the council. That would ultimately be my position. It would move it into a higher level, have a position description that's written specifically for the duties that are included under this position. And then it would build civil service positions that would be non-exempt under the executive director to serve pretty much the roles that our current RCUH staff are filling right now, including having a planning section, administrative assistant that helps with funding allocation, tracking, contracting, procurement, a program specialist that would kind of be on the prevention side of invasive species work. It could have an information section, and then a program specialist that would work towards existing invasive species here. It would help with the data sharing objectives and oversee a couple of different positions. And so after discussions with the co-chairs, also our first deputy, Ryan Kanaka-Ole, it looks like we can do this organizational restructure administratively, so through the department, but with doing, getting the civil service positions approved through the legislature, which is what we would like to pursue this coming legislative session, is asking for a couple of these critical positions to become civil service positions in the next session. So, excuse me. With that, I'll turn it back to the chair for the recommendation, which is on the submittal that the Hawaiian Invasive Species Council approve the Department of Land and Natural Resources as the administrative host for the HISC to proceed with a new organizational structure for the HISC program support. And that would be starting with establishing the executive director position, and the 3 positions we identified for civil service would be the planner, administrative assistant, and a program specialist to start us off. And Chair, I'll pass it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Chelsea. Appreciate that. So, council members, this is a reorg. Currently, as Chelsea was explaining, the position is under DOFA, and I'm assuming this is somewhat of so when we transfer to DAB, that entire program will transfer. So we're having an organizational structure developed now within DLNR, because under the Act 236, and I guess Rep, so help us understand the intent of the ledge. So it's 5 years, the transition, but it stays with DLNR. And then after the 5 years, it transfers over to DAB. And we know that there's some issue regarding the funding of that, but that was the intention of the ledge. Let us see.
Yes, so
Okay.
2030
Yes, 20.
is the timeline. Different
Correct.
sections of Act 236 effectuate at different periods. So we do know that Hawaii Invasive Species Council is set to move over to DABS in 2030 at this time. So part of the transition is standing up the Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity. So besides the statutory languages effectuating as soon as the bill was signed into law in July, the other pieces, then one of the next staffing related pieces is the Deputy of Biosecurity getting established January 2027. And giving that position time to stand up the division before the transition of Hawaii Invasive Species Council. Although we did learn in our last meeting, and I got corrected that the funding transitioned sooner.
And is that the intent? Was that an error or is that, so is now after FY 27 moving forward, does that mean that funding for HISC, because the program stays with DLNR until
Correct,
2030.
correct.
Funding may transfer over to DAB.
Yes.
So DLNR has to request funding, like a JV, what do they call that? JV, yeah, from the DAB to us.
I don't know if we can make that adjustment because it is in statute. So we would have to ask Budget and
Okay,
Finance
okay.
if there were any alternatives to strengthen or make it easier for the budgetary purposes of that, or we would need to adjust that little part of the statute is my understanding,
Okay,
because it is written in there
okay.
to my forgetfulness at the last meeting.
I'm sure you will, the intention is clear. So it is DLNR's intention to have to have HISC be a standalone. And rather than it being within DOFA, that's why collectively we had discussed making it, and as well as when we testified at the legislature this past session, one establishing their own LNR number.
Yeah.
So like what we do for Mauna Kea, what we do for Kirk, Ahamoku, they have their own LNR number. They will have their own budget. They will have, but we do need the ledge to establish the position because DLNR is intending to keep that DOFA position as they've somewhat been on loan for a considerable amount of time, but our intention is to keep that. So, but we do need the ledge to establish the positions and then we will redescribe them within our org chart. At this point in time, we are proposing to have HISC fall under the chair's office, not under DOFA. They will fall under the chair's office. And we will prepare assuming once the positions are established by the ledge, we're prepared to simultaneously move forward on a reorganizational chart and then seek formal, begin the procurement process for the positions. But we think that that is the best organizational structure to support HISC during this transition and then eventually when it moves over to DABS. Any questions, council members?
Just a question. So I guess the concept would be it's an attached agency, like how ADC is attached to DBED, formerly DOA. And so,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the way the statute, and the way that I know it's the same thing, it might be a matter of semantics, but they're
Mhm.
administratively attached to us. So we provide fiscal, IT,
Correct.
and HR support,
Yeah.
but they manage their own budget.
Mhm.
The HISC director is accountable to
The
the
chair.
chair and the council members.
Chair.
Yes.
And maybe this is also a question for the representative. HRS 194-2A, which establishes the HISC, and then 2A4, which gives it its charge. Because it was established initially as advisory council, I'm assuming that the enabling statute does not include the normal duties and powers of an executive board, and therefore it does not have the authority to enter into and execute contracts, to conduct procurements, am I correct, Chair?
I don't.
We don't have that provision.
But
written into our statute.
so who executes the contracts currently? Is that DOFA?
Yes.
Okay, so you're right.
So I'm wondering, I know this could be a phased kind of thing, but if you're contemplating amending the session law to change the timing of the funding for the, the organization, possibly adding some of those normal powers and duties that an attached agency normally has. And of course, there's plenty of examples of that in all kinds of, attached agency legislation. DBED has a lot of them, so I'm very familiar with that.
I think one of the maybe not challenges is that it is not going to be at this time. I think the intention is it's not a detached organization when it moves to Department of Ag and Biosecurity, because we created a division. When there is a deputy director, it's a division. So would the legislature want to create a detached agency and then undetach it in 2030? So those are one of those legal things. The legislature will have to decide what they would like to do, understanding that it has to align with what's going to happen in 2030, or you create a detached agency to sunset in 2030, or that's what it would, if we establish a detached agency. As Dr. Kim would know, it's not going to be detached unless we change the law on the Department of Ag space. It is currently not planned to be a detached agency. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you for the explanation. It does make sense.
Well, Chair, could I, so the language in the Act 236 that changes the statute is just ultimately changing the administration of the council from Department of Land and Natural Resources to Hawaii Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity. So I don't know if it goes into embedding it under a division. Maybe that's the intention, but
I think that was not determined the process. So if a piece of legislation was coming forward in 26, that would just be a consideration. Is the intention then to remain it detached from the Department of Ag and Biosecurity as a separate council? Or is the theory putting it directly under the department? I have to check on how we worded that to be sure if there was a lean of intention of how it was written. Because that might shed a light on that intention, but I can't remember exactly how we worded it. Because that may lean into, it just moves in its current status.
Can I,
Yes.
one more follow-up?
No, yes.
I could see so within DLNR, things that are not within the chair's purview go to the Board of Land and Natural Resources. That can make it harder to be nimble and quick in addressing things of an invasive species nature, such as acquiring services to address a new biological threat. So it might make this is just thoughts. It might make sense to give this potentially new attached agency, some of the same things that DOFA has, so that they can move quickly and nimbly and flexibly as they originally intended to do, until they move over to DAB, which then might maybe have a different approach to how that works.
Go ahead.
Chair, I was just going to make a comment that there is substantial change that will happen leading up to 2030. And because this council is here, what I would recommend is that the council makes a recommendation to the legislature. If not, we're going to take all your input in meetings and make our own recommendation. And I apologize that I leaned into it's the purview of the legislature. Yes, it is. but this council can make a legislative recommendation. So whether that's digesting the proposals today, you could lean into a light approval, but it would be great to maybe see a bill that gets presented, that HISC and certified that HISC would like to make these recommendations. And we could put that into a bill versus members meeting on their own or making their own decision. Although I don't know if that's what the subject matter chairs would like to do, but it is of this council to lean into some of those recommendations.
Yeah. Because Mary Alice, I think, and I've got David here too, but so a lot of DOFA is able to respond very quickly and timely to a large extent because we've received delegation authority from the board to the chairperson. So through me, or we've actually gotten delegated authority to the administration. So we're able to move a lot quicker.
Okay.
The HISC board meets quarterly. So, yeah, so I guess we do have to think about this. What may be, because you're right, the whole purpose of HISC is to be that nimble, to be able to respond timely to invasive species risk. So, okay, what is the pleasure of the council with respect to, one, the reorganization perhaps can move independently, but this larger question about being administratively attached or separate? Mary Alice?
Chair, I'd like to make a motion approving the recommendation of the staff
Okay,
today to get this process kicked off.
okay,
I think it's, it does take time to
Mhm.
make these kinds of changes, and issues will come up during that
Mhm.
process as well. So I
Mhm.
think it's important not to lose any time
Alright,
in
okay,
moving forward.
good.
So I move that the Hawaii Invasive Species Council approve the DLNR resources as the administrative host for HISC to proceed with a new organizational structure for the HISC program support.
Okay, so because I know we have members of the public, so before I take a motion, I'm gonna permit members of the public or other board members, if other council members, if you've got any comments, but if you can hold that motion, thank
Sure
you.
will.
But I appreciate, I think that calls to a head. So, council members, do you have any other questions for Chelsea before I open it up for public comment? Okay, I'm gonna take public comments. Do I have anybody in the boardroom that would like to provide a comment on item submittal 1 under the agenda? Anybody on Zoom that would like to provide a comment on this? Okay, seeing none, I'm gonna close public comments. A motion has been made. Do I have a second to the motion?
I second.
Okay, a motion has been made. I've got 2 seconds to the motion. So I'm gonna take the voting members, since I know I have a little different style. I like to take the first motion, get a roll call vote from everybody. So let's see. Chelsea, do you want to do a roll call vote of all the voting members? Okay.
Just gonna look at people. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, there you go.
Department of Transportation, Dexter Kishida. Business Economic Development, Mary Alice Evans. Dr. Kim with Hawaii Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity.
Aye.
Chair Chang with Department of Land and Natural Resources. Phyllis Shumamukuro Geyser with University of Hawaii.
Aye.
And Kathy Ho with Department of Health.
Aye.
Okay. You're on mute, Kathy, but I could read your.
Aye.
Okay. The motion passes unanimously with 6 votes, so thank you very much. So I appreciate the motion, but we will continue on the conversation both internally, and then we'll come back to the council. But I do appreciate Rep. Kahaloa's comment to the commission to really think about what kind of direction we'd like to make a recommendation on, whether there's a bill or any substantive changes. And but I think we've got, Chelsea, we've got the authority to move forward on this reorganization. So excellent, thank you. So the next item is the presentation, let's see, on the fiscal year FY 26.
Mahalo Chair, members of the council, members of the public, Chelsea Arnott on behalf of the Hawaii Invasive Species Council Program Support. I'm gonna bring up Mason Russo, who's our research and projects coordinator, that will help with this presentation. So we're gonna be presenting on the fiscal year 2026 HISC funding process. I got it. There we go. And recommended budget by the Hawaii, the HISC Resources Working Group members. And so there's gonna be two parts to this, the funding process and considerations from the HISC Resources Working Group for the drafting of the fiscal year 2026 HISC budget. And then the second part will be the recommended awards, which will, unfortunately, Matt Carano with Department of Health had to go on a last minute business trip. And so have Mason helping me out today. And so we'll get started, and this is gonna look familiar. We discussed the funding process at our May meeting, so a lot of these may be familiar, but I just wanna make sure everybody's on the same page about our funding process. So this follows the submittal too that you have printouts of. So the Hawaii Invasive Species Council provides interagency coordination and direction on invasive species issues in Hawaii. Each year, we get funding from the state legislator that supports interagency projects and programs that will enhance agency capacity, fill gaps between agency mandates and existing programs, and or it advances our collective knowledge and tools through research and innovation. We do have funding priorities that guide how we score and review applications. Those are not just pulled out of thin air, but based on our 2017-27 Hawaii Interagency Biosecurity Plan, and then our HISC CGAPS joint strategy, which is in support of the biosecurity plan. These are the actual strategies. There's key actions that kind of specify the implementation over all of these strategies that were identified through our overall invasive species network in the planning process on, you know, what do we really need to focus on in the next 5 years to kind of make forward movement with biosecurity. And so these are our funding priorities that we score all our applications based on. It's addressing prevention and early detection, rapid response for new terrestrial and aquatic invasions. And so that entails any species that do not occur here in Hawaii. So new pest incursions would be things like red imported fire ant, which we don't have here in Hawaii. Management of inter and intra-island movement of invasive species. That includes both aquatic and terrestrial species. So these are things that do exist here in the state, maybe just on one island or one area. Koki frogs, little fire ant, that all falls under that funding priority. Implementation of large-scale control of widespread high-impact invasive species. This really focuses on encouraging new innovative techniques to work on those widespread pests like mosquitoes, a lot of the Wolbachia control and those types of new technologies. We really want to push those forward. Increasing Pacific regional biocontrol research and capacity. We focus on classical biocontrol. So this is the introduction of a natural enemy of a pest to control that pest that exists here. And then maintaining an engaged and supportive community. So those are our 5 funding priorities that we base a lot of our points and review on. This is the funding timeline. It starts around June with the call of proposals, and it finishes up with the council meeting here today. But of course, after that, we start processing purchase orders and putting accounts together to set up the awards. We have evaluations, and then we do a resources working group meeting, and then we bring our recommended budget before the council for ultimate approval of our FY 26 budget. So our members of the resources working group are really critical to what we fund each year. And they are designees from each of the departments represented on the council. We have Rob Hoff, who's the representative for DLNR, Forestry and Wildlife. Our other counterpart to that is Lizzie Monaghan, who's with Aquatic Resources Division. We have Rachel Beasley with Business Economic Development. Maybe if you're here, you can raise your hand, you'll make it. Matt Carano, who couldn't be with us today. Tomo Murata with Department of Transportation, who's online with us. We have Dr. Richard Kim, who got to join the process this year, which is really great. And Jonathan Ho with both with Agriculture and Biosecurity. Mike Melzer with University of Hawaii. Christy Martin with University of Hawaii. And then we have HISC program support with myself and Mason that help review. Application eligibility, just real quick, we only fund government agencies right now. And we had some talk about this at a previous HISC meeting of funding private contractors in the future. But right now the process is set up just as per our statute, interagency projects and programs, really working towards those three objectives that I mentioned earlier. So we can fund federal agencies, state departments, counties, and public universities. This is how the evaluations work. Basically, the majority of points are based on how an application demonstrates they're able to achieve one or more of those funding priorities. They can get additional points because we are an interagency council. They can get funding points for if they've demonstrated that their project serves multiple sectors that are represented on the council, and if they can leverage funding or show that they are able to leverage funding. So there's a total of 57 points possible. We started applications that scored low through the quantitative process. So that's the review of our resources working group based on the funding priorities. If they come out low scoring, then we do not recommend those applications go to the next step, which is the qualitative process of discussing each application and drafting a recommended award amount at our resources working group. So I'll mention those when we get into the attachment one. That's part of the submittal. I always like to compare what we had in fiscal year 26 compared to fiscal year 25. So this year, the total amount of requests was around 12.3 million. That's compared to last year was a little bit over $8 million. Our HISC base, this, I'll go through a breakdown of this, but this is the funding that we've been given general recurring funds to the HISC for the last, I think, 5 or 6 years now. And this includes subtraction of our overhead for DOFA, the restriction, and then HISC program support. Act 236, we got that 4.25 million additional funding through Act 236, which is amazing. And I'll go through this breakdown, but this is what we have available for the competitive pot. And then our HISC program support, we take funding to support the staff that I mentioned in the last submittal and the operations that support the council functions. POEM is our port of entry monitoring program. As part of that Act 236, $4.25 million. We allocated this chunk to supporting the program, which pretty much supports the entirety of the monitoring at the state airports and harbors for those priority pests. What we have remaining is 5.6 million, a little bit over that. And so what that means is that's what we have available for the pot of applications this year. That 12.3 million, that's the total requested. That's what everybody's asking for. And what we have available to divvy out through this competitive grant process is 5.6 million. And that's compared to FY 25 on the right side there. So this is a breakdown of how we get these numbers. We get 5.75 million general recurring funds through LNR 402, which is under the Division of Forestry and Wildlife. It's our Native Resources Wildfire account, and that's where our HISC funding goes. I don't know exactly the reason, but we've been subject to a 20% reduction to that account for the last 3 years, and that carried over into this year. So that equates to around 1.5 million being cut out of our HISC base. And then the overhead with DOFA, and then the 10% restriction. So ultimately what we have from that HISC base is around 3.5 million. Now, when we got that 20% reduction, we also got these supplemental funds, which basically equal the 20% reduction. And so you can see we're pretty much at status quo. That's the big story here. We didn't go through any reduction in our base because we got these additional supplemental funds, but those are also have to adhere to overhead and the restriction. And so those two numbers combined are what equal the 4.78 million in the base. Okay, now the additional funding. At our May meeting, we had a meeting specifically to talk about the allocation of the Act 236, and this was before the governor signed the bill, but we wanted to make sure how we were going to ultimately spend these funds. And the council agreed that we should spend them as was communicated to the legislator during session. And so the way we broke down the $4.25 million ask is we wanted to increase the amount of funding to support research. We wanted to do that for biocontrol. We wanted to increase the invasive species committee's funding, especially to work on those priority pests, which are coconut rhinoceros beetle, coqui frogs, and little fire ant. We wanted to have some funding to support increasing his capacity, especially with the interagency MOU and some of the actions required of that, which include data sharing initiative and other activities. We wanted to have funding to stabilize the port of entry monitoring program. And then there was miscellaneous funding around 110,000 that didn't have an exact fit or an allocation to it. And this funding is only subject to the restriction. It wasn't subject to any DOFA overhead. And so the red is what gets subtracted out of the 4.25 million, and that's how we end up with the just under 1.3 million that gets added into the amount of available HISC funding along with the base. So again, just circling back, that's what it looks like. So we're trying to fit 12.3 million of requests into 5.6 million of available funding. But just know those other pots, the HISCs are getting more funding, biocontrol is getting more funding. So there's a lot of great support coming out from that additional funding, and we're very grateful for it. Evaluation categories. Let me skip to this real quick and go just over the summary. So we had 54 applications in total. This is huge because last year we had 19 and we basically had no research proposals last year. It was kind of the business as usual programmatic ask. So this was a huge increase. The total, of course, requested increased to around 12.3 million. And then what we did, because we had so many applications and we had kind of different pots of funding because of the Act 236, we created categories so we could review those applications with other relevant applications. So we have the programmatic requests. Those are considered, ones that are a collection of related projects managed in a coordinated way. That would be like Hawaii Ant Lab, operational costs, island invasive species committees, like these bigger projects or bigger program requests. Project requests were we initially called them research projects, but they kind of had some variety to them. So we define these as temporary endeavors undertaken to create a unique product, service, or results. And then we had biocontrol requests because we did have separate funding to support biocontrol. So these are projects that are specifically addressing the use of biocontrol. It did not necessarily have to be classical. We didn't message on that specifically when we asked for proposals. And then we did have additional considerations for Koki management requests. We specifically solicited for research projects to address Koki management in Hawaii. And so applications that were submitted for that were subject to a secondary evaluation process from land managers that are actually working in these infestations and have put together various research questions that they feel will help them do better management of these existing infestations. Okay, so through our process, for our resources working group meeting, we had 50 applications for consideration. We removed 3 based on the low ranking review. We categorized those into 14 programmatic requests, which equated to 7.5 million, 32 project requests, which equated to 3.4 million, and 4 biocontrol requests, which were around 465,000. And we did have some resources working group pre-meeting decisions. We did, as discussed, 2 proposals were removed from consideration at the meeting based on their low score, and they weren't scalable. So it meant they needed to get this certain amount of funding in order for their project to be viable. And we weren't able to get to that threshold. Programs, projects, and biocontrol would be discussed separately, as I mentioned, as the categories. And Koki proposals were solicited separately and went through an additional evaluation process with the land managers. And they were from Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity and Department of Land and Natural Resources. We wanted to make sure that invasive species committees would be funded no less than their collective award amount from fiscal year 2025. That additional 1.7 million, we wanted it to be additional to increase and enhance their capacity. We didn't want it to supplement and like cut down what they've gotten in years past. And then several projects submitted requests above. We put a cap for research / projects at 200,000. And some people asked for above that. So we asked those applicants if we could lower to the max allowable, and they allowed that. Okay. I want to say we're almost there, but we're not. But I will take a pause. So additional considerations for decision making. I'll just mention our resources working group meeting where we have this qualitative discussion and we ask all the applicants to attend this meeting so we can ask them questions, but also it's this layer of transparency. And that's what we're trying to do throughout this entire process, is make it as transparent as possible. That meeting was 6 hours long.
Everybody showed up?
Everybody showed up.
That's great. That's great.
Yep, it was it was great. Dr. Kim was there, Mason was there, Rachel, Christy, Mike, Jonathan. So people had to step in and out, but I have to say, you know, that amount of time sounds grueling, and it was in some ways, but the discussion was really great. And I felt like even as hour 6 started coming to a close, each application got the same thoughtful process and discussion that the one at hour 1 got. So I just wanted to thank our members of our resources working group that participated not only in the review of those applications and doing the quantitative scoring, but that 6-hour meeting where we have what we have today to present to you, because it is a lot, but I learn a lot every time, and we all collaborate well and learn from each other in that process. What's the priorities for agriculture? What's the priorities for natural resources? So thank you to all our members for sticking in there, but also giving every application the fair review and discussion it deserves. So through that discussion, we did really, we talked about, there was a preference to fully fund smaller project asks versus partially funding larger project requests. And this is, you know, we weren't just doing this frivolously based on the numbers, but based on what the application deliverables were. So a lot of times what you'll see in our attachment 1 is some of those smaller requests for the projects. We're fully funding those, and that's because they're like $13,000, and sometimes we would not fund a larger project because we wouldn't get the same product if we cut their award amount down to like a fourth of what their request was. Members or our resources working group members really needed a clear demonstration on how project findings would be applicable to on the ground efforts. Sometimes that was hard. There were some, engineering applications.
All right. Okay,
I think Beth
all
got
right,
it.
we're, okay, good enough. Good, we didn't miss a beat, we didn't move right on. Okay, Go
Nobody
ahead.
saw anything.
Nope.
I guess they're breaking through the.
Yeah, some.
Okay, thanks Beth for taking care of that.
Yep.
Thanks Chair for mentioning it.
Yes,
Okay, we'll make sure our HISC program support is tracking that.
yeah,
So ISCs the invasive species committees were prioritized as critical programs to ensure there was adequate funding. And then we did end up with an excess of like 106,000 at the end of our drafting of the recommended budget. And our members decided that this funding would be best saved for, rapid response, emergency needs that could come up during the fiscal year. So members also suggested that this might be a best practice to continue in the future funding years, just because things come up all the time after this process. And so kind of saving that as an emergency de facto fund. And we also discussed, if we were drastically reducing an award amount, we did discuss, if there was other funding that may be supporting that project during the process. Okay, I'll pause there because that takes care of the first part of my presentation, which is an overview
okay.
of the funding process, and just see if there's any questions before we go through the actual recommended award.
Council members, you have any questions for Chelsea? Okay, you're on a roll. Do you need anything to drink?
No, I didn't bring any water. Oh, I did bring water. I'm good right now. And then I'm just looking at the, what time is it? 1:55. Okay, so we have an hour. I think we can get through this. Typically in the past, we've gone through and just done summaries of each of the applications. There's going to be 53 applications that we summarize. So I just want to make sure that if that's the process we want to go through, we can also even summarize it further down and group projects together to discuss. But the way we proposed it is to go through each of the applications, short summary, and talk about their recommended award amount that they're receiving.
Okay, why don't we proceed as you were
Okay.
proposing? And knowing that we've got an hour, and I
Yes.
think on our agenda,
We can do it.
yeah. And then after that, we still need to approve the budget, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Sure, that would be great. Okay. So the very first part I'm actually gonna go over is going to be the projects that we did not recommend funding on before the resources working group meeting based on low score and scalability. This includes a project from USDA APHIS to develop and assess methods for mass production of indigenous nematode cultures. The second one was the University of Hawaii CTAR, which was a portable diagnostic system for early detection of rapid response or of early detection of rapid ohia death. And then the last one was Koki acoustic disruption, which was a project submitted by UC San Diego. And again, this one went through a secondary evaluation process because it was part of our Koki submittals, and we are funding a similar project to do Koki disruption just with another applicant. So we're definitely ensuring that we're not duplicating any of the project efforts in here along the way.
were the project applicants also notified of our meeting today too?
Yes.
So, okay.
Yeah, they all received that, and we also encourage them to sign up for the HISC listserv to just for future follow-up. Okay, so with that, I am going to go through the table 2, which there should be a correction on the table title. It should be recommended budget for programmatic requests. And then I'll turn it over to Mason to start us off with the project request. So our programmatic requests, these typically fall above $200,000 in total requests. I'm going to go through each of the applications, but you'll see that the invasive species committees tend to submit multiple proposals, but they're divvied up between, on the ground invasive species management and their outreach program. So the first application and the way they're ordered is by how they ranked quantitatively. So you'll see we have an application number for them. That's just for our guidance. But the fourth column, the overall application on the score, that's basically the points that they got from the quantitative review that our resources working group members put together.
So that's the cumulative number?
Yes, yes, out of that 57 points. And then the very last column is what the recommended award amount is going to be. So the first application is from the Maui Invasive Species Committee and Molokai Invasive Species Committee. They submit jointly. This is for their outreach program. And these invasive species committees are very well ingrained within their community. They put together early detection, rapid response messaging for those priority pests, educational support for teachers, basic media, PSAs, newsletter, and of course, community engagement for koki and little fire ant control. They're also looking at a Myconia program with the messaging to pull it and report it. And so their request was for just under 290,000, and their recommended award amount is 110, just a little under 111,000. The next project is Rapid Ohia Death Outreach and Extension with the University of Hawaii. This is 6 months of salary for the Hawaii Island Rapid Ohia Death Outreach Coordinator who participates and helps coordinate different workshops, Ohia Love Fest, going to events like the Merry Monarch and communicating science to the public, which is really crucial with those pests. And so their submitted request was just under 60,000, and we recommended just under 23,000 for that program. And they do get federal funding also that supports them. The next project is with the Ko'olau Mountains Watershed Partnership. They work in the upper Ko'olau Mountains. This would be for an invasive melastome similar to Myconia, Tibicina control in the Helimano Pomoho area. And also they've been working and going to work more with partners for little fire ant and koki frog control, especially there's been koki frogs and little fire ants found in natural areas. And then distributing the biocontrol for strawberry guava and doing community control work with albizia.
Can I ask you, Chelsea,
Yeah.
is a recommended award based upon, I'm assuming you get the committee's gotten a much more detailed itemization of the project. So is it a percentage or is it based upon
yeah.
their project
I
proposal?
think I deleted a really important one. So yes, after we do our evaluations and we get the scoring out of 57
Mhm.
points, that number gets inputted into a spreadsheet that we've been using for a number of years to it basically creates a baseline recommended award amount based on their score, what they requested, and then how much funding we have available. And so that becomes the basis of the resources working group. It's like a starting point.
Okay.
So we're not like starting at like, let's
yeah,
just cut
yeah.
it down. It really is taking the quantitative score. And that's why we have kind of the qualitative discussion, because it doesn't always reflect all the different nuances and components that need to be considered to ultimately fund these projects and prioritize them.
So it's not arbitrary, there's actually an
Yeah.
objective criteria basis upon which.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's usually a plan for that.
Okay.
Yes, and that's what everybody had to stare at for 6 hours the other week during our discussions. And I do have a slide here to follow. And then the next project is 16. This is Kauai Invasive Species Committee. This is their early detection, rapid response and control. They asked for a little over $1 million to support this. It's kind of like their bread and butter of doing the invasive species management. So it's prevention of, mongoose, brown tree snake, red imported fire ant. They also survey high-risk sites for red imported fire ant and little fire ant. They control koki at 3 nurseries, survey control and outreach for expansion of the little fire ant infestations. And then it also includes control for 8 priority weeds. And there is partial funding for some rapid ohia death outreach work in there. So that one was recommended at 560,000, just a little over that. And then Oahu Invasive Species Committee, this is their priority weed control, which includes on Oahu control of Myconia, devilweed, Himalayan blackberry, cane tea, Cape ivy. So all of these have really high weed risk assessment score, meaning like they have high potential for invasion, which we know because they're here, and pest, and they're prioritized by their steering committee. And then they also are able to identify new weed species as they do their survey. So they requested just under 1.2 million, and their recommended award amount is 566,000, a little over that. Their next application is outreach. So again, similar to HISC, I won't go too far, into the details. They do a lot. They work with communities on little fire ant, koki frog, volunteer outings, and then just spreading key messaging. That request was for a little over 200,000 and recommending 240, just under 240,000. Sorry, one up. So they requested 367,000, and the recommended award amount is 126,000. HISC public outreach, again, very critical to community engagement. I'll just kind of skip over its messaging, events, PSA, media, all the things. They requested 213,000 in the recommended award amount. We actually bumped it up 240,000, and I'll go into the table 3, which is a cumulative amount for each of the HISCs, which is ultimately how we do these discussions. The next proposal is widespread invasive species for Big Island Invasive Species Committee. I'll just highlight some of the things they work on. This is their rapid ohia death and albizia forest teams. They do tech support, tree felling, aerial vehicles, helicopter ops, and they also support the national park in Hakalau with widespread weed control, and they do aerial mapping of weeds around Pohakaloa. And so they asked for 536,000, and we recommended them 266,000. Next
Are
let
they
me
gonna
just
restart it?
Yeah. Let's see.
Sorry to speak from just the recording that stopped was an AI text note taker, not the
Okay.
stream to
Oh,
YouTube.
okay. Okay.
Thanks, Beth.
So hard to tell nowadays.
I'm glad you're on there.
So hard.
Can I ask you,
yes.
Chelsea, sorry, if there's any other questions by council members, please let me know. Now, so these fundings are not, I mean, they've been funded in the past.
Yes.
How do you quantify their success in the past?
They have to put together final reports.
Okay,
And
okay.
so when they put together their proposals through their grants department, they have to lay out the deliverables and also outcomes. And most of the time those are numerical. And so when they put their final reports together, they have to demonstrate how they've met those deliverables. Or if they weren't able to, what's the justification of why those weren't met?
And those are all considered as part of when you evaluate the new proposals?
Yes,
Okay, that's
exactly.
helpful.
And they also, if they're collecting spatial data, which all the invasive species committees do, they have to submit data to HISC biannually,
Okay.
so we can record that.
Great.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Want to give you a little bit of breath. Take
Yeah,
it.
thank you. I know, I'm like, so I'm just gonna skip.
Yeah.
But I will, so real quick, I'll just kind of go through the outreach proposal for BISC. I'll just highlight. Let's see, where is that one? Okay, community engagement and pest early detection and rapid response. So they requested a little over 500,000 and we recommended 274,000 for that one. Again, Maui Invasive Species Committee and Molokai Invasive Species Committee, they requested just under 1.5 million for their kind of on the ground invasive species operations, which include controlling over 10 plant species, coqui frogs, little fire ant, coconut rhinoceros beetle, stinging jellyfish. And that's a majority of their field crew, and we recommended them at, oh my gosh, why do I keep losing everything? 739,000. So with that, that's the ISCs. I'll give you a cumulative table of what their overall awards look like. We also had Hawaii Ant Lab request funding 450,000. So this is for their general operations and supporting some of their staff that exist on Oahu and over on Hawaii Island, but serve a statewide capacity. And they also received money through Act 236, 500,000. And they submitted a research proposal too that we'll go over. And so I feel like for the first year in quite a while, Hal, if this is approved, is looking pretty good in terms of like stable funding to support their program going into FY26. We have the coordinating group on alien pest species that requested 98,000. This is partial salary for their program manager and planner. They coordinate the Stop the Ant Month campaign that actually is going to be happening next month for October. They do key messaging on priority issues. And then one of the additional asks they had this year was contracting for a video or a campaign for invasive aquatic species, which have been, as we know, a huge problem we've seen in the last few years. And so their recommended award amount is at 80,000, just a little over 80,000. Okay, if we look at the next table, you can see overall, we talk about the invasive species committees kind of collectively. We don't necessarily go through each of the applications, and we compare what they had in FY25 to this year. And overall, they're all getting a little bit of an increase from that HISC base budget, in addition to the funding that was carved out of Act 236. So this will just enhance their ability to kind of work on, especially some of those priority species I mentioned before, but to do the critical work that they've been doing for decades now with like Myconia control and just incipient invasive species control. Okay. All right. Any questions on the programmatic request before we get into the projects?
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just curious, the scores on the ones that you just discussed were extraordinarily high, whereas we move into much lower scores coming forward. Why weren't the higher scoring ones just fully funded as opposed to kind of distributing the wealth with scores that were so low on a relative basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we do base our, so the programmatic requests historically always score higher than our research proposals and our project requests because they're hitting more of the 5 funding priorities. They're not just they're doing a lot of prevention, on the ground control, sometimes biocontrol work in addition to outreach aspects. So they tend to score higher compared to projects. And in the past, that has led us to severely underfund research projects just because they're not hitting all the same funding. They hit like one of them. And so they typically score really low. We had a much larger pot of funding dedicated to the programmatic request that we worked off of, which is this amount. We used 3.8 million of that 5.6 million overall to support the programmatic request. So we definitely were lifting those programs up because we see them as critical components of kind of the biosecurity puzzle. But we felt we really wanted to make a push to support more research, and we feel the need of it as we're kind of dealing with some of these like the coqui infestations, little fire ant. And so we pulled aside 3.4 million for those remaining 32 applications to support those project applications, even though some of their scoring is drastically lower compared to the programmatic ones. But that's part of the discussion is, does it have merit? Should we fund it over, fully funding a programmatic request?
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, go ahead.
Chair, may I ask?
Yes, please.
I saw that on some of the funded proposals or projects that some of them were getting funded to federal agencies. Were there any thoughts to not just the quality of the application, but the fact that federal agencies were seeking funding, understanding that the federal government significantly cutting our funds from many, many departments? 34 million just from the university, as we understand today. So I didn't know if there was anything to say, not the reputation of the budget, but whom was asking for the funds in regards to those that were our federal entities.
Yeah, and maybe, I don't know if any of our resources working group members if you wanna come up and help answer questions.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Hello, Christy Martin, coordinating group on alien pest species for this purpose, one of the members of the resources working group. More so what we looked at when we were looking at the federal agency requests is, for this one in particular, biocontrol. They are one of the few agencies that are able to produce biocontrol for the state, and they're a federal agency. They partner so closely with the state, though, that they have staff that are hired through RCOA. So it's coming at it more from that perspective. It's not like, oh, this agency is cutting us. It's more like this agency isn't able to do the work that it needs to do for the state. And how can we help that agency fulfill its mandate to the state? And if it's by supporting a tech, then, and they can deliver a biocontrol for the state, then that was good for us.
Thank you. I would just be prepared for a response to that, because the legislature in the next several years is going to have to take a lot of state cuts, and one of it is going to be because of federal cuts. So how you justify that we're returning money back to the feds that are cutting our budgets is just important to have in your back pocket.
Yeah, appreciate that. Listen, do you wanna take over?
I can take over. Also, I can add to that previous statement that some of the state agencies are helping with biosecurity and early detection of critical species we don't have. So some of these proposals are specific to state priorities. But I want to give Chelsea a break. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Council, for being here today. I'm Mason Russo. I'm the Research and Project Coordinator, and I'm just going to go to some of the people for applicants now. So next we have compatibility of an introduced coffee variable parasitoid and entomopathogenic fungi treatments, which investigates how volatile organic compounds emitted by a fungus impact the host-seeking behavior of the parasitic wasp that's being evaluated as biocontrol agent for CBB. The fungus has been the primary management tool of CBB in commercial application right now. The goal is to see if the fungus influences the ability of the biocontrol in viable and non-viable hosts. This was applied for 115,883 and funded at 39,298. After that, we have a UHMBBE proposal targeting RNAi-based herbicides for landscape level control of widespread invasive plants. And this one develops a targeted RNA interference-based herbicides to control widespread invasive plants. It projects with OA and RP to test tech on 7 priority species. This is described as a pilot effort to test efficacy RNAi for weed control and can be more targeted and effective as a tool than herbicide. It's requested 144,983. It's funded at 54,769. Next, we have the management of turmeric red staining in Hawaii research proposal for UHCTAR. And this one evaluates resistance of or susceptibility of turmeric accessions or to turmeric red staining, assessing the efficacy of biological fungicides in managing red staining, and enhance grower knowledge and capacity to manage the disease, which can help reduce crop loss. This requested 54,799.91 and received $45,000. Next, we have UH-Hilo managing Queensland longhorn beetle. This is a mass rearing distribution of parasitoid to local communities and industries, tests natural synthetic chemical products as deterrents to egg laying. This was requested 108,845 and received $55,000. We have another UH-Hilo proposal, passive acoustic monitoring of invasive coqui populations on Oahu. And this is the continuation and expansion of passive acoustic monitoring on Oahu for 2025 to detect presence, expansion, or retreat of coqui in key areas, evaluating the effectiveness of treatment of different control strategies, and provides actionable information to land managers and response teams, engage the local community, and contribute to overall understanding of management. And this requested 13,750 and received the full amount. After that, we have a UH-NREM proposal, which is behavioral ecology of invasive mammals, leveraging game camera data to guide management. And this is to analyze data from, this one was cleared out, so I'm probably gonna skip the description for this one. But it was to analyze data from camera at various sites to examine how invasive mammals shift behavior and habitat use in novel environment. After that, we have a UH line arboretum proposal, which was AI model application for rapid ID of invasive plant seeds. And that was a collaborative project to develop AI-driven mobile application for the rapid ID of invasive plant seeds. This requested 62,903 and was cleared out to 0 at the end. Next, we have a USDA APHIS, scaling up rat lungworm surveillance in Hawaii as a model for integrated early detection. And this USDA APHIS was a project that builds an integrated surveillance framework that improves efficiency and strengthens early detection capacity across the state for rat lungworm disease by sampling rats in areas that have been previously surveyed on Hawaii Island and integration of rats throughout Maui and Lanai. And this project requested 134,779 and received $70,000. After that, we have a UHCTAR proposal, developing image-based phenotyping tool for early plant disease detection and host resistance screening. And this one was to develop an image-based phenotyping tool for exactly that, for koa wilt disease, which is part of broader research to cultivate koa wilt resistant varieties and to make the disease detection process more effective, which is currently just visual inspection, filling key early detection gaps. And this one requested $50,000 and received 22,666. After that, we have another UHCTAR proposal, which is the integrated weed management of invasive rubus species for Hawaii Island, which is the development of an integrated weed management system for rubus control on Hawaii Island by selecting 6 highly invasive sites to establish control and IWM crops, invasive weed management. These plots will consist of electrical fencing for ungulate exclusion, cutting and chipping rubus residues, the use of a specialized compost application for pre-emergence for seeds, introduction for goat grazing glycophosphate for spot sprays and revegetation with crops, extension and education for ranchers and conservationists. And this one requested $200,000 and got 98,218. After that, we have a proposal through Utah State. I'm just going UHCTAR, which is the ecological restoration of Myoporum sandwicensis by mitigating the impact of Myopora on K. myopori on Myoporum And this proposal was to identify genetic resistance traits in Myoporum and propagate new resistant varieties. So this one requested $200,000 and received $113,328. After that, we have the Utah State request exploring acoustic deterrents for controlling and disrupting coqui frogs. And this one tested whether targeted acoustic stimuli can suppress coqui activity, including calling behavior, territorial interaction, and site fidelity. And this requested $146,388.50 and received $122,000. After that, we have a USDA ARS proposal for red imported fire ant early detection and rapid response tools for Hawaii. And this USDA proposal is based on the development of a user-friendly tool for the early detection and eradication of incipient populations of red imported fire ants by designing and optimizing a smart trap for species-specific detection of REFA, along with water-resistant baits suitable for rapid response and eradication in humid environments. And this one requested $100,000 and received $65,000. After that, we have a UH-HELO request, which is the eDNA strategy for CRB detection on Hawaii Island. And this proposal was to evaluate early detection with eDNA to detect beetles before the damage occurs, and to develop an eDNA toolkit targeting both CRB life stages and co-occurring arthropod invaders. This complements a funded SERDA proposal under Dr. Helen's repair. And that one came in at $56,647 was requested, and it was funded at $34,239. Following that, we have another UHC chart proposal, the survey of guava root knot nematode on vegetable crop in Hawaii. And this survey is for the early detection of guava root knot nematode that is not currently present in Hawaii, but threatens sweet potato production. This project will conduct statewide surveys, develop baseline distribution data to help generate risk assessments, and prepare the deployment of early treatments once or if detected. And this was requesting $111,728 and received $67,530. And then next we have a UH electrical and computer engineering proposal, which was drone mounted wave harmonic radar system for invasive pest insect monitoring in Hawaii. And this proposal aimed to test and develop new trapping approaches with UV light-based trapping, looking into the ideal height of traps, trap placements on palm.
Wait, which
I skipped that. Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I would just read the first sentence of that
Yeah,
one.
so this one is a little bit technical. And we're just gonna say developed a drone mounted harmonic radar system for real-time tracking of invasive species in Hawaii. And they requested $200,000 from us and received $60,000. And with that, I gave Chelsea a nice break. And she was gonna continue on with the next section of these proposals.
Yeah, and I would just mention, that last one is from a completely new school. Like, we've never had a proposal from the engineering division at UH, and it was a little challenging to understand, like, the on-the-ground application. But we really want, and so Mason's working with that applicant on kind of repurposing their proposal, so they have like some deliverables that we can see what the implementation would ultimately look like at the end. But we really wanted to encourage, getting some of these new researchers that aren't in the typical wheelhouse, but also supporting, our CTAR extension agents.
I was encouraged by that. I mean, I
Yeah.
think
So
it's,
there's a ongoing collaboration
Yeah,
between College of
okay.
Engineering and
Yeah.
CTAR. Yeah.
no, that's great. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's very
I think
exciting.
they have access to some technology that
Oh,
can
yeah.
help to facilitate our ability to
Yeah.
detect a lot faster, maybe.
Yeah, they were great, but
Thank you.
they needed to bring it down to my meeting, and I was like, what? Mason's like, I'll work with it. I was like, okay. Okay, we are halfway there. I'll try to give a good summary, but speed through these. So we're on
37.
37, which is another University of Hawaii. It's just testing and developing new trapping approaches with UV light-based traps, looking into the ideal height of traps, trap placement on trunks, ground traps, trap color. So just looking at what exists and just trying to improve them for coconut rhinoceros beetle, not just we use the traps now for detection, but also looking at them more on a control way too. So that one requested 25,000 and we recommended, I think, funding them at the full amount. Where am I?
Yeah.
7,500.
Oh, 27,500, yeah. All right. Oh, yeah, the full amount, sorry. Maybe I should use my actual. See, I take over from Mason, I just mess it all up. The next one was US Fish and Wildlife Service. This is doing a hazard analysis and critical control point planning for natural resource managers to assess whether human activities may lead to unintentional movement of potentially invasive species. And we did have if this type of training has been useful and utilized, and we had a good discussion with members that they have seen it utilized in different sectors. So this would just support it going out to natural resource managers and other departments that may be interested in this type of training. And that one was a request of just under 32,000. And we recommended that one at just a little over 21,000 to support that work. The next project was from the University of Puerto Rico, which was really cool. Again, it was part of our solicited COKI proposals. And they had multiple aspects of their proposal that included COKI sterilization, investigating different chemical controls, and then also another acoustic disruption. Their proposal was a little bit higher in across 2 years. So we asked them to kind of, what can you do in 1 year? This is 1 year of funding here. And so we're going to focus that funding on the chemical control, and we're going to work with that applicant if there's other aspects of that proposal that we can also implement. So they asked for just under 300,000. We recommended 85,000 for their project.
This is where-
research in Puerto Rico.
They'll do some of it in Puerto Rico, but they did include some travel budget to come over here and do some of that work. So I think they need to kind of test on our frogs and see, if it is the same and works the same on that.
This COKI came from Puerto Rico, right?
Oh, yeah, it's right there.
They should be giving that to us for free.
Well, originally Florida, so they,
Yeah.
I mean, that's their mascot right there. But they seem really great to work with, and we were happy to have their proposal submitted.
How did they hear about it?
So Ryan Chang, who's with Forestry and Wildlife, and then Jessica Mura, who's with Department of Ag and Biosecurity, they both reached out. I don't know how they did it, but they reached out to various researchers. So you'll see a couple of different universities that are included on these applications because they put a lot of effort into developing research questions and then finding those connections to folks.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was really great.
Okay.
So 23, this is with University of Hawaii, and it's looking at expanding Hawaii's arthropod DNA barcoding library, which would be used for early detection. This project's great because it's complementing a federally funded award. It's just increasing the amount of specimens that we're going to be barcoding for early detection. So this just gives it a little bit more oomph with the HISC award, which we're happy to participate in. So they asked for just under 60,000. We recommended a little over 42,000 for the project. We had a Colorado State University. This was mobile, large-scale coconut rhinoceros beetle traps. So it's using renting dumpsters to use these kind of, and putting a bunch of green waste and mulch in and putting a top on it and using that and seeing if that's, this applicant would probably hate me summarizing her application right now. But it's just another tool that might be in the toolbox to utilize for trapping and control of coconut rhinoceros beetle. So they asked for 152,000. And even though they're Colorado State, this applicant is actually located on Hawaii Island. We recommended 66,000, which would just be downscaling. So the amount of traps that they're creating.
Smaller dumpsters.
Yeah. Smaller dumpsters. or just one tester.
What island would they do the research on?
I think Oahu was the proposal, yeah, because we want to have like
Mm.
actual beetles that they could test it on. 25 is University of Hawaii. Again, it's another coconut rhinoceros beetle one. It's evaluating the use of pulse electric field technology for coconut rhinoceros beetle that generates energy pulses that are delivered directly into the soil or growing media or plant tissues. This type of device is already used to mitigate pests like insects, parasitic nematodes, and fungal pathogens. So it'd just be seeing if it would be useful for coconut rhinoceros beetle. They asked for, let's see, a little over 51,000, and we're giving them the full amount because we thought this would be a really great gap filling research project for those media that CRB typically travel in. The 38, this is a USDA one, so it's scaling canine detection. It develops and validates a scalable early detection rapid response system that combines volatile organic compounds into collection tools with centralized canine scent analysis to enable remote sampling and off-site detection. Obviously, some of these are really hard to summarize. And they were asking for 170,000. This was definitely, leaning on HDAB's input on, the need for more detector dogs. And so we're funding this one at a little over 128,000. 54, another University of Hawaii project. This is research to update the understanding of little fire ant food preferences. The last paper on this was published in 1992, so it's definitely in need of an update. And they'll evaluate the organic pesticides and additives such as caffeine and baits, which is something Hawaii Ant Lab has really been pushing to. We don't have any organic control options for farmers for little fire ant control. So that one was requesting 120,000, sorry, and we recommended 100,000 for that. Another University of Hawaii project, number 36. This is the University of Hawaii Bee Lab. So this is continuing. They really support our port of entry monitoring program by doing the genetic testing for Africanized honeybees when we get swarms. But they also do a lot of extension work with beekeepers. So this would be, helping to prevent things like varroa mites from spreading to the other islands and preventing other really detrimental mites that could come into Hawaii and impact our bee industry, which includes a really economically valuable queen bee industry. So that one is at 75,000 in requested. We recommended 62,000, and we might have some funding to support them through the port of entry monitoring program for that genetic testing too. And another University of Hawaii autonomous sensing system. This is just building on proven cellular coconut rhinoceros beetle camera trap surveillance by expanding the sensor capabilities for distributed detection of a wide variety of invasive species that could include coqui frog, Queensland longhorn beetles, and predatory hornets. And the traps can also be used in more rugged and remote locations because of the use of cellular. And that one was asking for a little over 140,000, and we recommended them at just under 122,000. Definitely a theme of supporting University of Hawaii. So the next one, again, is Hawaii understanding and controlling the spread of invasive coqui frogs. This one is a little different, where it's using radio telemetry to monitor and track coqui movement. So it's really focusing more on basic biology, which we haven't really looked into for a really long time, since some of our researchers left the island decades ago, I want to say. And also molecular screening with skin swabs for different viruses. So the telemetry will help provide some basic biology on the frogs. This would be specifically for Oahu and their distribution. And this is through Mark Wright's lab, who we funded a variety of projects through already. So recommending a little over 51,000. The total recommended award amount for this one is around 46,000. The next one, University of Hawaii. This is using RNA interference for a little fire ant. It would support a grad student salary that would develop RNA interference for invasive ant control. It's part of a larger invasive ant project with RNA, but Hawaii would specifically focus on the little fire ant component by conducting the analysis. And so procedures for other pests have already been developed using this technique. So looking at utilizing this for invasive ants. And that one is requesting a little over, you're trying to help me, a little over 36,000, and we decided to fully fund this one because we see a huge use for helping with little fire ant, but also other invasive ants that could come to Hawaii. The next one is a research project we've been funding for the last few years. It's the impacts of the invasive ramie moth, which attacks native plants in the Urtaceae family, which includes mamaki. So it's continually funding the postdoc or the PhD student that's been working on this, looking at the distribution, the threats, and then also looking at the management with existing parasitoids here, and then other options that farmers could utilize on their mamaki farms. So that one requested 87,000, and we decided that should be fully funded. Okay, we're almost there. Almost there. So 15 is Division of Aquatic Resources. This one's great because we've been funding one of their planner positions for the last few years with HISC funds, and they were finally able to get that funded into a civil service position, which was very exciting. So now we have, yeah, you probably remember that. And so now they put this project together, which is overhauling their current ballast water database to modernize the system that houses a collection of data from all the commercial ballast carrying vessels prior to the arrival in the Hawaiian Islands. So this will be just like a one-stop shop for all their information. And we decided we don't get I think we got pretty much no aquatic proposals, which is another thing we need to think about in the future. But we decided to fully fund this one, especially it's a very low cost and for getting this database started. So 25,000 for that one. And then this is the Hawaii Ant Lab research proposal. So there's just been a lot of new options for treating little fire ants that are being deployed. And this is just basically conducting formal efficacy trials to see how these different methods are, if they're being effective. And so reviewing drone treatments that are going to be conducted on Kauai, effectiveness of disinfestation treatment options for cargo and shipping containers by testing different fumigation products. So we thought this was a really critical project too. They asked for 200,000 and we just recommended a little bit under that for their project. And the last one was from Department of Health. We really didn't have, again, many health specific projects, even though, Little Fire Ant and all these other projects definitely go into the human health component. But this one specifically from Department of Health was for mosquito surveillance capacity. And that was the implementation of a novel and proven cold chain independent travel media that neutralizes pathogens to prevent nucleic acid degradation at ambient temperatures to detect and prevent arborovirus introduction. This basically creates a molecular surveillance system to monitor mosquito populations to detect and estimate the prevalence of circulating mosquito-borne diseases. And until recently, Hawaii relied on the continental US to do this capacity. So kind of this new novel technology will allow us to do it here in Hawaii. And this ask was for 164,000 and we liked it. So we decided to fully fund it.
So you know what I would just recommend, and maybe for next year,
Yeah,
that you reverse this, that you put the top projects at the beginning and the lower.
oh, okay, yeah,
valued
the higher
projects.
ranking
Yeah.
ones, gotcha.
Yeah, 'cause
That's.
I would
smart.
rather spend more time on the ones that you really fund.
Yeah.
And
We're giving them
understand.
all equal measure
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
And then last, I'll just kind of overview of this. We carved out 300,000 to support biocontrol. We always support some aspect of biocontrol every year with HISC funding. And this year we had around $465,000 in total requested. And so we utilized our 300,000 to support partial award amounts for these. And so it includes the USDA Forest Service, which is, one of the critical classical biocontrol programs here in Hawaii. So it's continuing research into natural enemies for invasive yellow Himalayan raspberry. And then also with Forest Service is continuing research into, I gotta look at the list of species for that one real quick. Let's see. So as Christy mentioned, biocontrol, a major activity that the Forest Service supports us with, and they have lost a lot of their capacity for their biocontrol program. So this funding would support that lost capacity by hiring skilled research technician to help with maintaining the ongoing projects, which include Tibicina, Myconia, devilweed, things that are on the horizon, and then things that, they have agents all like reared in their facilities right now that they need to keep alive for actual implementation. And then we had two proposals from University of Hawaii that were assessing releases for biocontrol agents for Willy Willy gall wasp and the macadamia nut felted coccid, and then also looking into classical biocontrol for holoscale, lobate lockscale, two-line spittlebug, and coffeeberry borer. So all seen as priority pests that we want to make sure we have some control measures for, and biocontrol is one of those great investments that just keep giving back. So those are the recommended award amounts. They equate to 300,000. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair for a reading of the recommendations for submittal to.
That is submittal.
Or
to-
questions.
Council members, do you have any questions before we read the recommendation? Okay, seeing none. Do I have any members from the public who's interested in making a comment? Did you have a question?
No,
Oh,
I was
okay,
like,
okay. So the recommendation is one, that the Hawaii Invasive Species Council approve FY 26 budget for the HISC support and an interagency budget for invasive species projects and programs recommended by the Resources Working Group provided in attachment 1. And 2, that should the Department of Budget and Finance make any changes to the restriction on expenditures, the HISC delegate authority to the HISC program support staff to identify best ways to apply additional restrictions to project funds or to identify best uses of any release funds. And 3, that if there are any changes in the scope or implementation of projects over the course of the year, the council delegate authority to the HISC program support staff to make adjustments to project funds or reassign project funds for any project that does not proceed in a timely manner. That's the recommendation. Council members, do you have any questions or do I have a motion? Alice, it looks like you're ready for a motion.
So moved, Chair.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes with 5 to 4, 5. Kathy Ho.
Yes.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Kathy. Can I ask that, perhaps in the future, I know this is going to be a tremendous amount of work, but if you could attach the proposals and a link so that the council members do have an opportunity to review them as well as the public, so that we can see what the projects are. I think that would be really helpful.
Of course.
For full transparency, so everybody knows what, so I wouldn't mind also seeing not only the proposals, but the reports that are prepared by the projects that have been funded, so that we know that they have met their outcomes, and we can evaluate. I give great deference to the resources working group that did all this work, the 6-hour meetings and all of the prep work. But it would be helpful, I think, for the council members to have access to that information.
So noted, definitely.
Okay, so with that, the motion passed. I believe there is that the last
Just,
submittal to, that's the one we just passed, right?
yes.
So we're going to take public comments. I believe we do have one public comment. Oh, yes, come on out. We did receive. Okay, come on up. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Hi.
Yeah.
Aloha, council members, chair,
Aloha.
distinguished representatives. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today. My name is JC Watson. I'm the terrestrial director for the Nature Conservancy Hawaii and Palmyra chapter. And thank you guys so much for sticking with it today and for supporting the invasive species work that it does. It's incredibly important. The reason why I'm here sitting at this table today is in relation to biocontrol a little bit. So you guys have funded, 300,000 to these amazing candidate species. And this has been happening for some time. And I'm here to speak of kind of 3 pending releases that are waiting for permitting. These are general agents that would attack some of our worst weeds, primarily Myconia, Thydemia, and Tipicina, and they're just kind of pending there. It's been a decade in the making. I remember when I was actually at HISC back in 2015, 10 years ago, seeing the little beautiful orange butterflies that will attack the invasive Myconia, and we're almost there. We're on the 99th yard line, 99th foot line, and we're here to urge the Department of Ag and Biosecurity to try to expedite and prioritize the permitting for those release of those 3 pitches. And it would be a game changer for us as stewards and land managers.
Dr. Q?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. You've elevated it.
Yeah, please, if can, these would be game changers for us.
Okay, do you want to resend the applications to Department of Ag, or
I
are they
believe they're
pending?
Already there, pending.
Okay,
Yeah, I
okay,
think
so you know
we're
which one,
working
so
on
you
it.
have 3 of them, okay?
Okay.
Are you gonna lose any funding if you don't get those approved?
No, but we lose critical
Time,
watersheds.
oh,
every
yes,
day.
can't afford to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason. Yes, hi, come on in. Nice to see you.
These flower petals.
Aloha.
Chair, council members, representatives, Taya Penniman with the Maui Invasive Species Committee. I just wanted to say thank you so much for this process and for your support, and also to extend my appreciation and accolades to Chelsea for her work and her leadership. And to confirm what she said as someone who sat through maybe not all 6 hours of the meeting, but a lot of it, it really was a very thoughtful, transparent process. And that means a lot to us as applicants, and I have sat through many of them over my long tenure with Maui Invasive Species Committee. I also really want to thank the legislature for your leadership for this additional funding. It's going to mean a lot for us to have that additional support for our work. And also want to thank Chelsea and the council and all of the HISC staff for the flexibility. You talked about that, about the current structure and how that's allowed flexibility as projects that are not state agencies. Our money doesn't come in on July 1st. And so there are times where the ability to expedite those funds makes the difference between keeping trained staff on board and not. And so we just are so appreciative for that support and that flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you for that. You can think a lot of that can go to DOFA too.
Yes.
David fronts a lot of the funds until we get reimbursed. So yeah, It does help. Thank you so much. We also did receive a written testimony from the Nature Conservancy.
That was the same thing.
That was the same? Okay, okay. So, all right. Is there anybody else who'd like to provide a public comment? All right, I am quite impressed. It is 2:50. We went through a very long agenda. We actually were able to briefly describe every single proposal that got awarded and more. So thank you so much, Chelsea. Thank you, Thank you very much, Mason. Committee members, council members, do you have any other closing comments? Or legislators, do you have any closing comments that you'd like to make? We appreciate your presence and your continued support of this. So with that being said, I'm gonna adjourn today's meeting. No other business before the council. We're in adjournment and we will see you. I don't think we do we have a next meeting scheduled, Chelsea?
We don't, but we've discussed doing another
Yes,
pre-legislative
yes,
session,
yes.
November.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do we have, maybe this is.
Do you want me to give an update on transition or?
Yeah,
Okay.
can you do that? I know it's not on the agenda. Danica, can she just provide us a little update on the transition? Who's gonna complain? No actions are taken. You gotta kind of go with, since you got 5 minutes, you got 5 minutes
Okay.
before our official stop time.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, mahalo for a great meeting and hanging in there. Chelsea Arnott, for her support for the council. So my official last day will be October 31st.
Okay.
We foresee a gap in getting somebody into the permanent position. Right now, it's been released internally. We're waiting for human resources to put the position out externally. Rob Hoff, who's the state protection forester, is my supervisor, so he's charged with seeing that process through. In the meantime, we are going to be hiring an 89-day hire. That will be filling in for my position in the permanent position, and they will start November 1st. That's gonna be Pat Chi, who actually has worked for Division of Forestry and Wildlife and has actually been in the acting role as the HISC coordinator in the past. So he's gonna be helping to oversee like two main priorities for the HISC, which is preparing for legislative session, and then also kind of the next stage of the funding process here, helping with procurement and setting up accounts, and making sure that all runs smoothly. And then, of course, the HISC program support team is going to be designated to some of the meetings and various projects that I was lead on, but we'll put that on to them. But there will be a period where we're kind of like just keeping on what we've been doing and not trying to do too much more unless it becomes a priority. But we would like to have a meeting probably in November sometime just to prepare for the legislative session and have some collective requests going into session that may include Rep. Kahaloa's, what she mentioned earlier in the meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I appreciate sort of the seamless transition, notwithstanding your departure. But Pat, thank you for stepping up so that we're going to try to minimize any disruption, but ensure that we're ready for legislative session. Okay, very good.
I couldn't be there in person, but hello.
Thank you, Pat, for stepping up. And I'm sure between you, Chelsea, and the chairs, we'll try to prepare for the next meeting as well as legislative session and the reorg that was just passed today. Okay, with that being said, I'm officially adjourning the meeting. Good meeting. Thank you, everybody, for attendance. Thank you, Chelsea.